We ready?
Mitchell, start her up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like right now?
No, like 5 minutes.
I just never know what to say without sounding all corny, right? But like, well,
Dude.
you guys saw the thing about Bill Belichick's dog, right?
Yeah.
People are like, little did you know that dog's cousin was an Air Bud. What's poppin', guys? Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Southeastern Sports Insider Podcast. Today we're just going to be looking through the draft that happened this past weekend, and we're just going to be ranking the teams based off how we think they did in the draft. So we have 5 different tiers, an S tier, which I'm not exactly sure what it stands for, but I think that's just the best. Satisfactory. I guess, best of the best. We have the A tier, which is for obviously A, B, C, and D. Just goes worse going down. I'm the host of this podcast. My name is Mitchell Brooks, and as always, I am joined by Connor Kelly and David Desplenner. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Okay, no answer from Connor there, but
Connor.
that's okay. So we're just going to be going through. We have all the teams down here in order of their draft selections, ending with the Steelers, and then we have some teams who first-round draft picks. So, first pick of the draft was Joe Burrow by the Cincinnati Bengals. What do you guys think of this pick?
I like it. I think that they're finally going to get their franchise quarterback that they like. And then they also went out in the second round and they got T. Higgins, which I think is going to be a very good wide receiver to
someone that I was
give him to someone to throw to. Yep.
Right. I think everyone and their grandma, the Bengals were going to draft Joe Burrow, yet they still took pretty much all of the 10 minutes they had to make the selection.
Yeah.
I think overall for this draft, I think I'd give him an A or a B just based off the fact that they didn't not pick Joe Burrow and they ended up getting who they needed.
Got it right.
And then they were able to pair up. Yeah, they were able to pair up Joe Burrow with someone in T. Higgins who's going to be young, hopefully stick around with their team for a while, and hopefully be 2 franchise players for them.
Mm-hmm.
So next up is the Redskins, who once again took a pretty good draft pick. Took Chase out of Ohio State with the 2nd overall pick.
Another obvious pick.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much the first 5 or so picks of the draft were all set in stone beforehand. Everyone kind of knew what they were going to be doing with it. Connor, I know you're an Ohio State fan. What do you think of this pick?
Obviously, it's a good pick just because Chase Young was purely the best player, and now that Joe Burrow was gone, quarterback, there's no need to take Tua, so it just makes perfect to take the best player.
Also, didn't have a second round pick.
Right. Their next pick wasn't until early in the 3rd round, where they ended up drafting Antonio Gibson, a wide receiver, which can't have too many receivers, I guess, if you're the Redskins. Because I think the Chase Young pick was definitely a really good pick for them, but other than that, there wasn't a standout.
I think I'd give them like a B for that.
Yeah.
Because they obviously had Chase Young, which is probably the best player in the draft, but then after that, they really didn't have any other high picks. So
yeah. So next up, we have the Detroit Lions, who drafted a cornerback, right? Jeff Okudah from
another Ohio State. Another Buckeye for Connor.
First three players were all Buckeyes, so that's obviously a good thing.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Obviously, this is a pretty obvious pick for them. Like I said, the first 5 or so picks, everyone knew. It didn't really get interesting after the 5th pick. But what I'm looking through right here, they did have 3 Ohio State picks in their draft.
Yeah, they had a couple of guys on the D line and then like a guard in the middle round. No one of like any.
Jonah Jackson,
11th pick of the 3rd.
Too. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like Cronwell or something was the last guy.
Cornell.
Cornell.
Jason Cornell, I guess, defensive end in the 7th round. Don't know if he'll make the team, but I guess just going for some depth
drafted
there.
2 running backs also.
Yeah, that was
one from Georgia. Yeah.
DeAndre Swift. Perfect name for a running back.
Jason Huntley.
Mm-hmm. What are you guys thinking
Interesting.
about this? Their overall draft?
Well,
I think
it's
I'd,
weird just because let Darius Slay go and then just proceeded to fill him. So I'm not sure they got a whole lot better, but they obviously took the best guy on the board, but let go of Slay. So their team, it's basically just filling a hole that
yeah,
they
it's
created
just a
themselves, which is kind of weird.
Right, they didn't really make up any ground with it. They just,
Exactly.
yeah. So I'd
but
probably put him at like a C. I feel like
I'd go C plus, B minus. It's
well,
so
yeah,
you're not getting a whole lot better, but it's what it
yeah,
is.
let's throw him in a
right.
C.
And next up is the New York Giants, and they picked Andrew Thomas, which is an offensive tackle out of Georgia. Just trying to make that offensive line a little bit better. They ended up picking another offensive tackle in the 3rd round out of UConn. Those were and then a guard in the 5th round from Oregon. So really, 3 of their first 5 picks were offensive linemen, just trying to make that O-line a little, which I guess my thing is, if you look through the first round of the draft, any offensive linemen that were taken, which I don't know if the Colts had much to do with that in 2 ways, because 1, you see Andrew Luck retiring last year, shocking. So I think a lot of teams are seeing that if they want to keep a lot of these young players, they're going to have to make their offensive line better to try to keep them, because now that the Colts have one of the best offensive lines in the league, people are kind of wishing that they would have had more focus towards that when Andrew Luck was still playing for them. So I think a lot
Yeah,
of teams now are trying to have good protection while they still can.
I think they also know that they have Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in the league. So they want to try and create the biggest gaps for him, give
Right.
him the most help as they can.
Yeah, and
And
then
then
it's weird though because took the guy that they like. Not everyone like on TV was saying that the one guy from Alabama was the best, and then they took Georgia. So maybe they just saw something different, didn't know with what everyone else thought. But there's nothing wrong with going O line.
right.
Yeah,
And
I
then
feel
in
like
the sec
that pick was kind of a surprise because I feel like they ranked him as like the number 4 tackle. So I
Yeah.
wonder what they saw.
and then in the 2nd round they ended up taking safety Xavier McKinney out of Alabama, who some people thought might be a late 1st round pick, but he was able to slip down to them in the 2nd. So that was a pretty good pick, I think, for them. Definitely very talented safety that could have gone in the 1st if it had fallen like that, but very fortunate to get him there in the 2nd. What are you guys thinking for grade?
I'd go B. I think it's a solid draft, but just kind of that first pick was kind of questionable.
Yeah, I agree.
And next up, the Miami Dolphins ended up taking Tua from Alabama, quarterback. I think that was a pretty good pick for them. Obviously, the 2nd best quarterback in the draft. Just the only thing is some injury questions with him and his past, but I think it was a pretty good pick for them.
You really can't complain with getting your 2nd best quarterback without having to trade up and a guy that you think that can be with your team for a while. So you see a home run to have him at 5, and they had like what 3 first-round picks.
Yeah,
So
3 first-round picks, so they picked another offensive tackle
definitely got
to
better.
try and
That's for
protect
sure.
him. Picked a tackle and a guard to help him out.
Yeah. So, I mean, giving Tua some protection is obviously
And
gonna
once
be
again,
important.
like you were saying with the Andrew Luck thing, maybe they saw how Andrew Luck career played out and decided to go O tackle heavy just to sure
Yeah,
that
and they know
he doesn't
how
have the same fate as Andrew.
they knew his history too.
Yeah, especially with how injury prone he can be if he does not have a lot of protection. I think that was definitely a good decision by them to go after some guards and tackles early, just to give Tua the most protection they can. So I think with the pick of Tua and then what they surrounded him with, they ended up drafting only one receiver, and it was in the 7th round. So they didn't go after get a lot of targets for him, but I don't think you're needed to
They
do
still
that.
have
Still have a couple good receivers.
yeah, they still have what's his name?
Parker.
Yeah.
So,
And
like I said,
they also traded for Matt Breida, so they have a running back as well now.
So I think they probably got a B on this, if you ask me. Nothing really stood out a lot But what they were able to do, they just had a very solid draft, and they got what they needed. And
Yeah,
I don't think they're really.
I'd go B, but I'd also be convinced to go up to A. I would be
Yeah,
fine with either of
I'd go
those.
A or B, but A might be big because they had 3 first rounders and then 8 other picks
Yeah.
along to go with that.
Yeah, it's kind of, you have to really, I think, with how many picks they had, they would have really had to, I think, knock it out of the park a lot to be getting an A.
Yep.
Next up were the Chargers out of Los Angeles, and drafting another quarterback, Justin Herbert from Oregon. I think that was a pretty good pick. Also, one of the best quarterbacks in the draft. And they actually had 2 first-round picks. They ended up getting Kenneth Murray with the 23rd pick after a trade. He's a linebacker from Oklahoma, so just kind of helping out the defense too. But they had to fill in the missing hole in offense after losing Phillip Rivers to the Colts. I think Justin Herbert has potential to be pretty good in the NFL, but really he's gonna have to do a little bit of work. But what are you guys thinking about?
Oh, I didn't know if you guys noticed, but on Roger Goodell's TV when they'd fill it up with fans, and every team had 15. Other than the Chargers, they only had 12. So
Yeah,
kinda
they couldn't
had
really
a
fill up
day
there.
with that, only finding 12 fans. That was my main takeaway. I got a good laugh out of that.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good draft for them. I mean, hopefully they got their future quarterback of the future in Justin Herbert. What are you guys thinking as a grade there?
Yeah, well, honestly, I have no idea what goes into scouting quarterbacks and everything, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they made the right decision or wrong decision. But when you don't have a quarterback on your roster, and taking one's obviously the best choice. I'd give him a B as well, because Herbert wasn't the top 2, but he also wasn't like one of the bottom ones that they really reached on. So I think they did a solid job.
Yeah, I probably agree with the B.
Yeah, they only had 6 draft picks, and they drafted a quarterback, a linebacker, running back, receiver, safety, and another receiver. So they went pretty heavy on the offensive side, drafting 2 wide receivers, a running back, and a quarterback, and only 6 picks. So I think they were really trying to focus on making the offense a little bit more explosive. Because last year I don't think they had one of the most explosive offenses. They're a little bit slow, I think. Pretty good picks.
Yep.
And next up were the Carolina Panthers. And they ended up taking Derek Brown out of Auburn, who's a defensive tackle with the 7th pick. It was their only pick of the first round. Then later, something kind of fun.
Buffing up that D end or the D line.
Mm-hmm.
They got the guy from Fishers, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
Jeremy Chin. He went to Southern Illinois, but went to Fishers High School. They got him late in the 2nd round. He's a safety, like I said. So
Yep.
they had a lot of trust in him. I think I was watching a video from their coach. He said he thinks he can be a really versatile defensive back for them. So hopefully he gets a lot of playing time here in the future. It was pretty cool to have someone from Fishers go out and make the draft early too. It wasn't really like a late pick or anything.
Yeah, that was, he'll be getting a nice paycheck from that pick. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Has a legitimate shot too to make the roster. So, what are you guys thinking as a grade here?
I think I'd go A, honestly. After seeing how San Francisco kind of dominated with their D line, they go out and they get the best defensive tackle in the draft, and then they draft Jeremy Chin, obviously from Fishers, which is a good sign. And I think everyone kind of he'll be a good player. So I'd lean towards A, but I'd also see B as well.
Yeah, I'd go A. They're really trying to buff up that D line, taking a D tag.
They did not take a single offensive player either.
Yeah.
Took
Which
3
really,
defensive
when you have
and
Christian McCaffrey, you don't really have to.
Right. But it's really solid draft for them, I think. Next up was the Arizona Cardinals, who had the 8th pick in the draft. They picked Isaiah Simmons, who was a linebacker from Clemson. And that was their only draft pick for either of the first 2 rounds. Pretty good pick, I think. And they only had 6 picks in the draft. So, and they similar to the Panthers, they went very heavy on 4 of the 6 were defensive picks. I ended up picking 1 offensive lineman and then 1 running back late. So I think they did a pretty good job buffing up their defense a little bit.
Yeah,
And
they
they go
also
ahead,
traded for DeAndre Hopkins, so that fills
Mhm.
that need for another wide receiver other than Larry Fitzgerald. But I think
Yeah.
that they did a really good job.
I'm gonna go
And
kind of contrarian to you guys though. Biggest problem was obviously Kyler Murray getting hit last year, and he's a really small quarterback. I think he's actually only like 5'10" or something. But you only have 6 picks. You took 1 offensive lineman. Your biggest need is offensive line to protect your young quarterback. So I think taking like maybe the flashier pick in Simmons, they could have traded down, maybe getting some more picks and on O line. So I'd go contra. I didn't think this was a very good draft by them.
Well, the thing is, you're really hoping that Kyler Murray can take some big steps this year, but he's not going to really be able to if he doesn't have protection that he needs. So it's just going to be kind of interesting watching them, seeing what he can do with little to no protection there. And the tackle they drafted was a 3rd-round tackle. So has potential to be pretty good in the NFL.
But not right away, obviously. When you're
Right.
drafting later, you're thinking more down the line.
So usually after rounds 2 or 3, you're just kind of just drafting for depth and then hoping that in the future they'll be able to learn and kind of come up and hopefully start one day. It really was not I think it was a solid draft. Defensively, I think they did pretty good. But like you were kind of saying, I think I agree with you. They could have gone a little bit heavier on the O-line.
Just based off that, I'd probably give them a C just because I'm not saying the players they took necessarily are going to be bad. I just don't know if it fits what they kind of needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. So next up was the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had the 9th pick. I ended up taking cornerback C.J. Henderson out of Florida. And then they also had another first-round pick, the 20th overall. They took linebacker from LSU. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. Clavin Chason?
Probably Clavon.
Jason or something like that.
Clavon
Yeah.
Chason, yeah.
I think that's how they said it on the draft.
Okay. Yeah, so they had a lot of picks in this draft. They kind of split it looks like, with offense and defense. It didn't really go too heavy on either side of the ended up drafting a quarterback in the 6th round, Jake Luton out of Oregon State.
Heard of him.
Yeah, it's not a guy that I've really looked a lot into, so I couldn't tell you feel about that really, but I don't know if it was the best draft ever for them.
I don't know. I was kind of. They're obviously rebuilding. A lot of guys have left from there, looking to deal with their running back. So I don't. Kind of a lot of safe picks, but I'm not sure it's really changing anything as the course of like trying to get back into the playoffs or getting back to the AFC Championship that they made a few years ago. So I'm not sure if it was a great draft, but I don't think it was anything terrible either.
Right, it was just very average to me because if you look, like the AFC South, you have the Colts, Texans, Titans, and Jaguars, and really you can pretty easily tell the top 3 teams are the Titans, Texans, and Colts. I don't think the Jaguars, definitely not last year, and I don't think they'll be up there this year. So it was just a very mediocre to average draft, if you ask.
I'd probably go C as well for the Jaguars.
I'd say either
probably
B or C, but I would say C. Now the Cleveland Browns, Connor, I know you're a huge Browns fan. Before we get into the specifics, what did you think about the draft overall?
Well, okay, so I've made myself a rule. My heart's been broken by drafts and free agent signings in the past. So I'm just gonna go ahead and not give my grade on this because I've been led astray as Stephen A. Wood Smith for years now. So I'm not gonna grade it. I'm not gonna give my opinion just because if I think it's good, it'll be bad, and if I think it's bad, it'll be good.
Okay, well, we'll just get into the picks then. With their first pick of the draft, the 10th overall, they selected offensive tackle out of Alabama, Jedrick Will, right?
Which they needed
Yeah.
really badly.
Yeah, so maybe gives Baker a little bit more coverage back there. But really, Connor, give us what you really think, because
I really have to go down into it. I think I'd go B. Got filled their
He
biggest needs
says,
and
as he
everything.
says, he's not going to give a grade.
He asked my opinion. I could see an A, but I'll go B. Nothing flashy, just fill their
if you
needs.
ask me, I think they did really good.
I've heard
Because
that statement a million times.
yeah, and I know people say that statement every year. And if you ask me, every year the Browns get so overhyped. And I'm not trying to overhype them, but I think they did a solid job in this draft, filling holes that they needed. And they really didn't take any questionable guys.
No people that had questionable off the field issues, which we've had to deal with in the past, that have burned us pretty much every time. The list goes on, but
I think we can give them an A if you ask. Like, if you guys are cool with it, I think they got an A.
I think they had a pretty good first few rounds, and then they got Donovan Peoples-Jones, which I know Connor's very high on when they took him. So I think overall they had a pretty good draft. I'd put them in the
A. Okay. Next up is the New York Jets, who had the 11th pick. They picked yet another offensive tackle, got picked in the first round out of Louisville. Once again, not exactly sure how to say his first name. I think it's Mekhi Beck.
You're right.
Yeah. So I think a pretty solid pick. I mean, if you ask me, you can't go wrong if you're picking an offensive line. I mean, obviously you can, but
Those have gone wrong many times with offensive linemen.
Yeah, but
I hear you saying though, just nothing flashy, just getting your team better.
Right, and that's what, like, I keep going back to the Colts just because that's what I know a lot about. But like, if you look back 5 or 6 years ago, people would say the Colts had one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and now people are saying top 3, maybe even the best. Now that they've drafted Quentin Nelson, probably one of the best guards in football. So I think teams, if they make a focus to get offensive linemen, just to solidify their unit or their offensive unit, just nothing too flashy, but just to make them better. I think that's always a pretty good pick if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you.
All right, so I think I'd give them a B.
Probably go B, yeah.
Go B as well.
All right. So next is the Raiders. I think overall they did a what do you guys think? It's hard to say for me.
I'm going B here, actually. They took a lot of receivers, and one that everyone wanted was CeeDee Lamb, and they had the chance to get him, and they took the second best receiver at Alabama last year. So I'm going to go D with this one.
D. Okay. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think they did terrible by any means. Took Justin Jefferson in the first round, and then also Jeff Gladney, cornerback. So got a wide receiver and a cornerback back to back, pretty much.
Had a lot of picks too.
Yeah. So I'd say I'd give them a B as well. I don't want to give out too many Bs, but
I think that's the average grade. If you just went through, filled everything normally, you get a B.
Right. Okay, so now the San Francisco 49er, who in the first round picked defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw, 14th overall pick. And then they also
the Colts pick, right?
Yeah, only 5 picks.
Yeah, so
the Colts.
They had the 13th pick from the Colts because they traded them to Forrest Buckner, and then they ended up trading, and then they ended up filling that hole that they lost Buckner with, and then they picked a wide receiver up late.
And they also
wide receiver I'd
they
never
traded with who did they trade with for that? They traded for like an offensive guard, didn't they? Because
they traded with the Redskins, didn't they?
I think it was the Redskins. Yeah, they traded with the Redskins for that. For that offensive guard, and then
they also traded.
Obviously, they dealt away
Trent Williams.
They got Trent Williams. That's right.
Yeah, they got Trent Williams and dealt away Matt Breida.
Mm-hmm. So I think that was I don't want to give out too many Bs, but once again, I feel like this kind of what it is.
I'd go C, honestly.
Yeah, I'd
Just
go
because
C.
we traded Buckner and then just got a worse defensive tackle with that.
That's one thing I
what
didn't get
sense
either
that makes.
And
because
then they also gave away Marquise Goodwin just to draft another wide receiver by swapping seventh
Yeah, that
round
also didn't
picks.
make sense.
and it's not that they're just trying to get younger because Buckner's only 25.
I
So
think both of those players are pretty young, and so they're really just trading for replacements at that point.
yeah, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we'll give them a C there. So next is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Their first pick was tackle Tristan Wirfs with the 13th overall pick. That's who they traded with 49ers, kind of double deal for the 49ers to go back one, and they ended up taking that tackle. I think they had a very average draft once again. Took a tackle, a
Just trying
safety,
to
or
help
running
out
back.
Tom Brady.
Yeah,
as
they
much
took
as
a
they can.
tackle because they have Tom Brady now and they don't want him to get him hit. I'm going A.
A? I can see an A, yeah. Because the last thing you need here with Tom Brady and his old age is
Brady getting hurt.
right.
Yeah,
Especially with all the targets they have now.
yeah,
since
all
they
the wide receivers and
they got
obviously with Gronk coming back,
so.
their deep offense was really set.
So now we have the Broncos, who I think did really. I don't think they really had a bad round or anything. Nothing too crazy.
Which is
Took Jerry Jeudy in the first round. Wide
And then when I took
receiver.
KJ Hamler.
So
second
back-to-back
round,
wide
another wide
receivers
receiver.
for their
Yeah.
picks.
Had
So
like no receivers besides Sutton before that, so I think that's good. And they built
Yeah, giving
around
him
their
some help.
quarterback. Yeah,
So I'd give him an A, I think.
I'd
go
go
A as
A.
well.
So now we have the Atlanta Falcons, who in the first round picked cornerback AJ Terrell with the 16th overall pick. Really, once again, nothing to stand out of this draft.
Yeah, only a few picks really.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard that guy was supposed to go in the second round or late first. They kind of reached on him, so just for that, I might go C, just because time
Yeah,
you
I'd probably
really
go
reach
C
on a
or D
player.
because they reach on a player in the first round, and then at the end of the draft, they took a punter, which I mean,
that was a little
don't know how
bit
good that guy is,
questionable.
I
but
feel like you
I
could
feel
just
like
sign a punter.
yeah, I feel like you could definitely sign him off of undrafted.
So the Cowboys now,
Hey.
their first pick of the round. Yeah, they seriously knocked it out of the park. Honest, I might consider even giving them S because
I would be down for S.
I would
Jerry
go
Jones
S.
is on his $250 million yacht with someone holding his phone for him the whole
Yeah.
time. Flex,
Well,
so I think that's S worthy.
I read a joke that was like, I feel like they just put Jerry Jones on this yacht with no access and told him that he was making the selections, but then really just someone else just drafted for him because it was that good of a draft, I think, for the Cowboys.
Yeah,
There's really nothing much else to say, I feel like.
Are we doing one S or two teams get S, or what's
we'll
just
give
I
it a
think-
few.
Yeah, I think no more than 2 or 3.
right? Yeah, I'd definitely put them as
Yeah, because
S.
I think that because Dallas, they didn't really need a lot of flashy players. They obviously have a stacked offensive line. They have Dak on a franchise tag, I'm pretty sure, and then Zeke and Amari Cooper. So they got CeeDee Lamb and then just went straight to defense.
Yeah, I think probably one of the best drafts of the or one of the best draft. How I want to say this, they had the best
Classes, best
Yeah.
draft classes.
Now we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who in the first round they took wide receiver Jalen Reagor, ECU, and then they also took Jalen Hurts, quarterback from Oklahoma.
Yeah, I
going
think this
D.
draft is very questionable. Yeah, I'd go D.
With Carson
I-
Wentz.
Rager,
Two
there
is-
was. I think there's a lot of more wide receivers that were still on the board before him, and then Hurts. I've heard that they're trying to do a Taysom Hill type of player,
Which
so
is
we'll
just
see.
very
very
do.
questionable.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that's the second worst quarterback selection I think of the draft because we're coming up soon to which one I think is the most questionable.
Yeah.
But speaking of Taysom Hill, the New Orleans Saints are up next, and they picked a center with their first pick, another offensive lineman, Caesar Ruiz. I think I probably butchered that name, but he's center from Michigan. And then with their next pick, number 74 overall, they took linebacker Zach Bond. I think they had a really solid draft.
Yeah, I like that.
For the 3 picks that they actually had, they had 4, but I'm not really counting Tommy Stevens at the end because they already have they obviously just signed Jameis Winston, yeah. So they already have 3 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming he's not going to be used.
It's just going to be backup Taysom Hill.
Yeah. But other than that, I thought that their 3 other picks were solid.
Yeah, I'd give them an A.
Go A as well.
Because once again, like we said with the Buccaneers, when you have an old quarterback like Tom Brady or like Drew Brees, you need a good offensive line because one big hit to them and they could goners. So now, like I was saying earlier, the most questionable, I think, quarterback pick of the draft was by the Green Bay Packers in the first round. And they selected
the most questionable draft.
Yeah.
Like
very, very questionable.
Like not even quarterback.
Jordan Love, and then they went and took A.J. Dillon, their second pick, a running back who...
So they could have gotten in the 4th round.
Yeah, and I feel they already have Aaron Jones at running back, so I feel like they don't need
them
another
being
one.
13-3 last year and 1 game away from the Super Bowl, looking towards the future and not getting Rodgers some help is really a bold strategy.
Especially because Aaron Rodgers still has 3 years left on his contract.
Probably still be good for 3 more years too.
Yeah, exactly.
This is also the same thing they did with Brett Favre.
Yeah, and pretty much the same ages too.
Yeah,
it did work out.
People
were saying Aaron Rodgers could have go like number 1 and then ended up just like pure luck, just completely falling to him. There was absolutely no talk about Jordan Love being the best quarterback in the draft. So saying I think we can give them anything.
I'd go D.
Yeah.
D for this draft.
Because they were really just a couple pieces away from from going to the Super Bowl this year, and then
nothing.
I don't know if this draft helped a whole
lot. So next is the Seahawks. In the first round, they linebacker Jordan Brooks from Texas Tech. I think once again it was a pretty average draft for them. They kind of just filled in some holes for depth a little bit, drafted an offensive lineman, but other than that, it just feels kind of average to me. So I think I'd give them a B.
I go B. Although they didn't really go a whole lot of defense. They didn't go secondary at all. They didn't see that they needed a safety, a D tackle. They didn't really take anything of that. They just went straight to taking 2 tight ends and some linebacker.
Yeah. So next up is the Baltimore Ravens. I think they also had a really good, similar to the Cowboys. Probably one of the top 5 drafts for them. They did probably. I never know how I want to say this, but they were one of the best teams this year for drafting.
Oh yeah.
So I think I'd probably give them an A. They drafted Patrick Queen with their first pick, a linebacker from LSU. And then got J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, who's a running back with the 55th pick. So I really don't think
going off of like what they need in their style play. I don't know necessarily if the players are going to be the best, just because no one is like an advanced scout or anything. But I think definitely just looking at what they like to do, I think that was one of the better drafts.
Yeah. So I think I gave them an A on that. Yeah.
Go A.
Tennessee Titans, who ended up beating the Patriots this past year. So they were pretty close, I guess you could say, to making a run for the Super Bowl. I mean, they made the AFC Championship game, so it wasn't the most competitive game, but they just had a few things to fill in the draft, and I think they did a pretty solid job with their first pick. Another offensive lineman taken, Isaiah Wilson from Georgia with the 29th. I think it was a pretty...
nothing that's going to get them over the top into the Super Bowl, but also nothing that's going to lead to them like falling off a cliff. So
right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that and go B.
So next is the Kansas City Chiefs. In the first round, they took
not like this draft. They took that running back from LSU first.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
A lot of people were really high on him.
I thought
I heard a lot of people like that drip.
Watching Dobbins all year.
Well, they probably would have taken him if he wasn't already picked, but
Dobbins was after, I think.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty
Dobbins
sure.
was second
Oh,
round.
he was. He
Yeah.
was. Yeah. So
His first
Yeah.
running back off the board, and he's only like, I think I would have gone. Obviously, who am I to say? They do a lot more work than me, but
right.
based off that, I think I would give him a lower grade.
I think a C.
I've heard
I
people
would
be
give-
pretty
I
excited
mean, they
about
were
him,
the
though.
Super Bowl champions, so it's not
Right.
like they
It's
to
not.
improve anything.
It's pretty hard to go high, so I'd say either a B or a C.
Yeah,
but
I'd
just based
go
off
C.
the first miss, I'd say C. Now we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think had one of the worst drafts.
With that,
Didn't really make a lot of sense with a lot of their picks. I mean, pick wasn't until the 49th overall pick, and they got Chase Clay from Notre Dame, who's a receiver, which is cool, I guess. I guess they're hoping he can do something.
still don't have a quarterback, which is their main issue.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger will be back, but really, who knows after this season how he's going to be.
Yeah, I feel
The
like they
last
definitely
couple of
didn't
years
really
he's been
fill a lot of
hurt, so
holes.
who knows if he's gonna be playing for very long.
Yeah, and Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges were both very. I don't want to say bad, but not good at all this year.
Not up to Steelers standards.
Right. So it was a pretty average draft, I think, for them too. I guess I'd give them a C.
I'd go C.
I'm good with that.
And now we have the Indianapolis Colts. I'm a little bit, but I think they had a really good draft.
Yeah, biased, but I think it went really well.
The only non-Colts fan, and I can agree with that. I'd give them S, honestly. Jonathan Taylor, one of my favorite players to watch.
Yeah, I mean,
Very solid all around.
I saw someone say they got 2 first-round talents in the second round with Michael Pittman from USC and Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin.
I can't say much about Pittman. Obviously, I'm not big into Pac-12 football. I don't watch a lot, but everyone said that he was really good, and he's a big receiver, which is what
I think 6'6".
Yeah, I think really the only problem with their draft was how they traded up for Jonathan Taylor, like 3 picks, when the other 3 picks that were drafted were all like defense. I don't really know what they.
I think they were.
The thought was behind that, but
they were scared that I think it was the Jaguars behind them, or that were going to be right in front of them. I think they were scared that the Jaguars were going to take Taylor, which I don't really blame them too much.
Honestly,
but then
if you
especially.
like a player that much, don't risk it. If you really think that you can be like an all-pro talent, go.
Yeah, and it's not like you're really giving away that much. I think they traded away like a
late
6th or
pick.
7th round. Yeah, they traded away.
And then they ended up getting back basically with a trade with the Patriots. So they ended up getting 3 picks in a late with 11 through 2-13.
Yeah.
So, and then if you consider the fact that they traded their 13th pick for DeForest Buckner, who's an all-pro, I think you definitely have to give them at least an A.
And they also picked up Eason, who I feel like a lot of people thought would be a second round quarterback at least.
And he fell.
So.
Yeah, I think he probably has one of the strongest arms in the draft.
Yeah,
and he'll have a year, maybe 2, behind Phillip Rivers to learn a thing. So,
obviously, it's the 4th round pick. So, like you were saying earlier, you're not really expecting a starting caliber player right away. So, I think if give him time, that could honestly, with his like potential, that could end up being like one of the better picks of the decade. Not even the year.
Yeah.
Also took a Ball State guard. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, staying in Indiana, that's pretty cool. I think I read he only played offensive line for his last 2.
Yeah, he played tight end like the first 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
potential.
And Ballard said he wants to use him more as a center or a guard. So trying to just help out that offensive line. So moving on to the Chicago Bears, their first pick was Notre Dame tight end Cole Kmet with the 43rd. Pretty average draft, if you ask me.
I thought it was a little questionable how high they took Clement, though. I feel like a tight end really early in the 2nd round wasn't really that smart. I feel like they could have gotten him farther back.
Right. I think there's not really too much to say on this draft, I don't think. But I think probably a B.
I'd go Bears,
I'd go B. My uncle's a big Bears fan. He swears they did a good job, so I'll take his word for it and go B.
So next up is the Houston Texans. Their first overall pick was Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle from TCU. They drafted him with the 40th pick. And then after that, they went defense again and got John Greenard from Florida, who's a linebacker. Really just tried to improve that defense, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of taking steps back after the trade with DeAndre Hopkins. They
Yeah,
didn't really fill that hole with him now. So
it was a very questionable trade there, which we
So I
touched
have
on our
no
last
reason
podcast
to
episode.
have faith in Bill O'Brien, so I'm going to go D just because I don't have any trust in him to make the right pick.
I'm gonna give him a C. I think a C is fair.
C's fair.
yeah,
I don't think they belong down there with the Raiders, Eagles, or Packers, but they definitely don't belong up in B. So I think a C is good.
Okay.
So next is the Los Angeles Rams. Their first pick was running back Cam Akers from Florida State with the 52nd pick. And then just 5 picks later, they picked a wide receiver from Florida, Van Jefferson, trying to improve that offense. I think they did really good in this draft. Maybe not one of the best, but I think they're probably an A in my eyes. What do you guys think?
Go A.
I think it's A. Yeah. Also picked up Bryson Hopkins from pretty late. Hopefully he does well.
So
for him.
And Jordan Fuller too. He's from Ohio State, and he did really good. He played for quite a while at Ohio State. He started almost my memory the last 2 seasons, and he did great jobs. So I think that's a steal.
So then on the Bills, second to last team here, their first pick was the 54th, and they drafted Iowa defensive end AJ Epinesa. I think they did really well in this draft as well. What do you guys think?
Well, didn't they trade their first round pick for Diggs? So you kind of have to take that into consideration too.
Yeah. So
they did.
I think just based off the fact that they were able to not only get Diggs with a draft pick pretty much, but then also fill in some much needed gaps with defense, and then maybe getting a back or third string running back with Zach Moss. I think you might consider an S tier for that. Definitely A.
I'll go A. I don't know about S, but I'd go A.
Yeah,
I'd go A.
And then finally, the Patriots. I do not think draft.
You
asking
know,
me,
Belichick's got something up his sleeve when he trades up for a D2 player.
Yeah.
To me, I'm not going to question anything Belichick does because he knows about 100 times what I know. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go A just because it's Belichick making the decision.
I'll throw it in B just because they weren't there night one. But I'll go B.
I was gonna say C, but I guess we'll average it out and give it a B. They ended up getting a new kicker to replace
some controversy. Like he has some tattoo or something that's like. I saw something on Twitter that was like a tattoo that's like some hate group or something that he like mistakenly got. Anyone else see that?
No idea.
I did not see anything about that now.
Don't take my word for it, but I thought I saw something on Twitter.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for the tier list. Obviously, these are just our opinions, but we think this is how the draft went for a lot of teams. Obviously, a lot of questionable picks in there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys for listening to this. If you made it to the end, and see, every time I do that, I just say thank you. I never.
Right.